8, then spoke Elijah unto the woman, whose son he had restored. So that's speaking of, you're familiar with the story of the boy that Elijah had raised from the dead, okay? The Shunammite woman. Arise and go thou and thy household, and sojourn there, wheresoever thou canst sojourn, for the Lord has called for a famine. Here's the warning coming as it's coming today. I believe that. And again, our time is not God's time, and His time is not our time, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. And so, whether this actual word has taken place, which I believe it has, it may increase, it may get worse, I don't know. He's telling this Shunammite woman to go and sojourn in a place because there was a famine coming. And the neat thing about this, if you continue reading, is this woman went, and she went for 7 years, but she came back to the king. She finds Gehazi telling the king about the works of Elijah, and he says, oh, there's the woman right there. And so she comes over to the king, and the king was excited, and he says to her, appoint unto her, actually she came back to get her land back, okay? And he says, the king says, appoint unto her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of her field, since the day that she left the land, even until now. That was her increase. That was her corn. That was her double, 100-fold portion or whatever. But to think about it, 7 years, she got back all that the increase every year had brought on her field. Like, that's plenty. That's got to be a lot. Food and grain and whatever. And that's what God will do for us if we're obedient to the word of the Lord. Yes. To the message, to the hearing of His heart today. And to prepare your vessels, to prepare your storehouses. Okay, last scripture, Revelation 18. And how I ended up there, because I have, I don't know what that word is, where you have, is it a dialogue? Is that what you call it? Where you talk and then He talks. That's the way I am with God, right? And I have my journal, and I'm got my pen ready, and so I said to Him, okay, Lord, you're telling me there's a famine. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that the famine is not of bread and water, but it's of hearing the heart of You. And You promise in this time that we will be filled. Those who have ears to hear will be filled. But I said, God, why is there this famine? I mean, I know, I could say I know, but I always like to ask Him questions. And that's when He said, go to Revelation 18. So we're going to go there. And what I'm about to talk on, I don't claim to have all the answers. I've had to do a little bit of studying. But I'm sure you could Google this topic, and you could probably, really educate yourself on this. But I'm just going to kind of briefly give you what I feel God is saying through this. Starting in verse 1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean, hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. We'll stop there for a minute. Back in September 2006, the Lord gave me a word. Some of you may remember this. He said to me, my church is drunk in the night. And I went, what? And I said, drunk in the night? And I said, what are they drunk with? He said, fermented wine. I hung on to that message for probably 2 or more years out of frustration, because out of all that message, God showed me the state of the church. She's intoxicated with error, with false teaching, with the Babylonian system, and the fermented wine, as we said earlier, the corn, the wine, and the oil. Fermented wine is false teaching. And to be drunk, as we just read, did we read that? Yes, have drunk of the wine of the wrath. Means metaphorically of the effect upon men of the partaking of the abominations of the Babylonian system. The fermented wine, as I said, wrong teaching, has caused her to be intoxicated. and he wants us to have the new wine. Okay.
Can I just add?
Yep.
In the Amplified, it said, the businessmen of the earth have become rich with the wealth of her excessive luxury and wantonness.
Yes.
Well, that's,
Yeah. That's,
isn't that,
Yeah,
isn't, where,
that's
isn't that where the faith movement is
that's
from?
right.
The
Definitely.
BMWs and the
Yeah.
$1 million homes.
Yeah.
And
And it's, you know what, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's all going to come down.
yeah.
God is going to
Yeah.
crumble it all. You know, back,
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but the
No.
church is drunk with it.
that's right,
That's
yes they
the whole
are.
focus.
That's exactly it, because as we know, Abraham was rich, Isaac was rich, and many of them.
Yeah.
But that don't mean he wants all of us to be rich, as we said, but that's a whole nother topic. But, you know, back when, in August, the Lord had given me a word, and I never got to share it did you speak in October? Yeah. In September, I forgot to share it, and in the word, he said many icons are about to fall. Well, then 2 weeks after he gave me that word, I had heard of 3 had fallen. 2 I didn't know, 1 I did know. So, many more are going to fall, I'm sorry, but a lot of people don't want to hear that. But if God's name is not lifted above that God, God will not tolerate it. He will not tolerate it. And he says right here, Babylon is coming down. Okay, so who is Babylon? Well, if you go back to Genesis 10 and 11, or 11 I believe it is, 10, sorry. Genesis 10, it's from the time of Nimrod. Nimrod started and he built, he was a mighty warrior. And it's interesting to me when I read this, it says his name means to rebel and revolt. And Genesis 10:8 says, and Cush begat Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one in the earth. And 9 says he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. I thought, okay, well, if his purpose was to rebel against the kingdom of God and start a whole other kingdom, how could he be a mighty hunter before the Lord? Well, I looked up the word before, and it means one that turns his face against. So he turned his face against the commandment of God, the authority of God, and he wanted to revolt against the kingdom of God so that he could build his own kingdom, okay? And again, you would have to kind of get into all that yourselves and study, but for time's sake, let's just go to Genesis 11. And starting in verse 1, it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, and it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And just a little quick note here, years ago I got to teach at a church when I first ever spoke in front of anybody. And the Lord gave me Ezekiel 13, and it talks about daubing it with mortar, which is the works and the flesh of man. So it made me think of that, and that's exactly what that is. It's a building and a glorification of man and the building up of what man wants. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach